Say you lost it! Say you lost it! Say it! Say it! Say it! I want my money!
Do you know the Acid King? In the early 1990s, renowned DIY filmmaker and purveyor of underground cinema, Jim Van Bebber, began work on a short film. For the uninitiated, Van Bebber is perhaps best known for his kung fu splatter DIY masterpiece, Deadbeat at Dawn. But to date, Van Bebber's most important contribution to American cinema is inarguably his feature-length film, The Manson Family, a savagely vivid hallucinatory nightmare mockumentary, and bar none, the most brutally vicious and hardcore retelling of the helter-skelter ever put to film. But this wasn't Bebber's first foray into true crime, because 15 years post 1969's Hippies Gone Wild and their mind-controlled leader, another crime would occur that would rock the nation to its core.
Northport, Long Island. A quiet community rocked by reports a teenager was dragged through these woods toward a late-night ritual of death. An eyewitness said the victim, Gary Lauwers, was forced to pray to Satan as he was repeatedly stabbed to death.
Gary was a high school dropout that frequently ran away from home. He had a penchant for theft, robbing cars, homes, his friends, and even his own parents.
Gary was a kid that nobody missed until he was dead. Gary was basically a dick.
This move by Gary, stealing what was, in reality, 10 bags of angel dust, set off a chain of events that would ultimately lead to the death of both parties involved. Because this time, Gary didn't just target a family member or an unlucky stranger. His target was Ricky Kasso, the Acid King.
Richard Kasso, the teenager charged in an alleged satanic cult murder, charged with the murder of one of his friends, Gary Lauwers.
I thought Ricky was an honorable person. He was vital, you know.
But behind the charisma of the Acid King persona was Ricky, a suburban kid from Northport, Long Island, an affluent suburb of New York City.
His father had kicked him out of the house since he was 13 years old.
And he mentioned that Ricky was a great kid as a child. The way he put it, he thought that Ricky had, maybe he said like faulty wiring, and at puberty it came out and he just turned into this different person that, became antisocial and couldn't understand morals, is how he framed it.
He was a scary looking kid.
By the time Ricky was 12, he was drinking and taking drugs, using acid for the first time in 7th grade before graduating to mescaline and PCP, taking as many as 10 hits a night and 40 tabs of acid every day. And that is how Ricky got his nickname, the Acid King. Because, to some of his friends, Ricky was an icon.
When you hear some of these stories about Ricky, it was like, he was kind of like an idol, I mean, just like, you'd hear these stories and they talk about, how crazy he was.
Now, much of what you've seen so far was taken from Jim Van Bebber's short film, My Sweet Satan, an unflinchingly brutal and bleak grindhouse-style depiction of the events leading up to and including Gary Lauwers' death.
O Lord and Master Satan.
With Van Bebber himself taking on the role of Ricky Kasso. Now, if you somehow managed to accidentally stumble upon early portions of My Sweet Satan without context, you'd be forgiven for mistaking it for an old Unsolved Mysteries reenactment.
Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries, drugs, death, and a descent into hell. Join me for an acidic, gore-soaked tale of Satanism in suburbia. Viewer discretion is advised. It's about to get nasty.
And this is part of what's so compelling about the short film, because the low-budget 90s DIY true crime haze of My Sweet Satan makes it feel less like a horror film and more like an Unsolved Mysteries episode on acid.
This is what happens when dare officers take a vacation.
But as the film progresses and the layers are pulled back, it seems more like an after-school special against Satanism, only if it were funded by Luciferians. Because this film has one of, if not the most, brutally violent depictions of a real-life murder that you'll ever see.
Ricky scared the hell out of me. You know, you just don't understand. When Ricky was high, it was like he was the devil. He would say things like, "Satan, I love you. Satan, I need you. Satan, you're my main man." Like it was personal, like it was family.
Because for Ricky, with the insane amounts of drug abuse came an obsession with the occult. So much so that he was arrested in 1983 for grave robbing.
Richard Kasso was awaiting trial on a charge of opening a 19th century grave in April and stealing a skull and a hand.
A lot of people don't realize that he's trying to dig up two graves. One I believe it was caught and one he wasn't. The grave that I know he dug up was an old Revolutionary War cemetery, abandoned in the woods. It kind of looks like the graveyard where he dug up Pumpkinhead. It's fucking creepy.
And I think he was trying to get in touch with the devil. So when you go to a cemetery, you smoke 10 bags of dust, and you start chanting and shit.
When they were tripping, they'd bring a tape recorder along with them with a blank tape, and they said it like that the devil like possessed the tape, and that there was all these different voices and stuff on the tape.
It's an American phenomenon. I mean, because kids in Pakistan ain't fucking listening to Ozzy and taking mescaline. And, they may be living in the woods and killing each other, but no, this has the American flavor.
While Ricky continued to spiral and disassociate with reality, Gary was living a mostly carefree life.
My name is Gary Lauwers. My profession is I'm a robber.
Hey, that's cool.
But part-time, I'm just a druggie.
Gary was a nice guy, nice enough.
He had a huge heart, a friendly disposition.
He came across as younger than some of the other kids. Like if you looked at Gary and Ricky, they were the same age. And, you know, Ricky definitely seemed older. So I couldn't say innocent, but look, upbringing has something to do with it. I think Gary had a more of a connection with his family.
He wanted to get out. He wanted to get away. And he used the imagery of an Amtrak train to Florida many times.
I think he got bullied a bit. Nothing that I knew of at the time that was too bad. I mean, well, until the end.
By this point, Ricky had dropped out of high school. Tensions with his parents became explosive as he would openly discuss drug use and drug dealing and frequently threaten suicide.
And Ricky couldn't stand his parents at all. He'd give them all kinds of hell, and they'd say, "Okay, you keep it up, we're going to have you thrown in jail." Then he'd say, "Fine, you throw me in jail. I'll kill myself."
After smooth-talking his way out of a psych ward, Ricky immediately returned to his delinquent ways, prompting his parents to kick him out for the final time. Now homeless, Ricky was sleeping in the woods and in friends' backyards.
At least I have a mom to go home to. I don't have to sleep out in the woods like Ricky does.
He was visibly disturbed. I mean, you looked at the guy and you knew something was up.
By this point, Ricky was reading as much occult literature as he could get his hands on and becoming obsessed, so much so that he befriended a Vietnam veteran and vagrant more than twice his age with similar interests.
Pat and Ricky found each other. You know, both of them were kind of people that most of the people in Northport would walk by and wish weren't there.
Known to locals as Grandpa Dirt, Pat would indoctrinate Ricky even further into the occult, urging him to get a human skull for ritualistic purposes, with the pair even traveling to the Amityville Horror House to conduct a ceremony in Satan's honor. So while Gary was dreaming of getting out of New York, Ricky's head was being filled with stuff like this.
Help us destroy our enemies, Satan. Ricky, think of the people you want Satan to kill and leave rotting in the earth.
And then it happened.
The difference between Gary dying and Gary living was me saying a word, one loud word at a party.
Ricky passed out at a party, and Gary stole 10 bags of angel dust from his pocket. When Ricky confronted him, Gary immediately returned half of what he stole and promised to pay the rest back. But this wasn't good enough for Ricky, who would spend an extended period of time mercilessly beating the ever-living shit out of Gary every time he saw him. even after Gary had paid him back. But unfortunately, repaying his debt only seemed to make Ricky even angrier, and as the beatings got worse, Ricky devised a diabolical plan.
The story goes, around 1920s, a minister wanted to start a temple. I forget what kind, some universalist thing, I don't know what it was. They had a town meeting, and he talked the town into giving him money to build this temple. Now, this temple was beautiful. This guy evidently had this temple started, and a lot of money was given to him. Well, he ran away with the money. He felt guilty. He came back. They had a town meeting. He promised to pay them back if they'd help him finish the temple or whatever it was. Anyway, they found him hanging. The kids now call it as taken.
This is where Gary would take his final breath. On the night of June 19th, 1984, Ricky and Gary ventured into Azteca Woods with two other boys, Jimmy Troiano and Albert Quinones.
They let me come along that night because they knew that I saw Gary rip Ricky off, and they him in front of me so that I would know that they knew.
Once there, high on acid and PCP, Jimmy and Ricky made Gary burn his clothes to keep the fire going.
Oh, I'm getting stage violence, man, but you want to hurt me or something.
This began a night of torture that by some accounts would last for hours. What exactly happened that night is still up for debate, but the aftermath is clear. Gary's hair was chopped off. He was bitten and kicked so hard that his ribs were broken. He was dozens of times, if not over 100, in his back, torso, and face, and his eyes were out of his head. But before the final blow, Ricky demanded that Gary say he loves Satan, but Gary refused, crying out his final words, "I love my mother." When it was all over, Ricky would later claim that he heard a crow calling, which he took to mean Satan, giving his approval of the
Satan approves.
In the weeks that followed, Ricky and Jimmy would brag about the
12 kids went up and saw their friend laying in a shallow grave, and none of them called the police.
But cops found the body, and the pair were arrested just 2 weeks later, while Albert Quinones turned state witness for the prosecution, agreeing to testify against both of them on the stand in court. Unfortunately for Gary and his family, where justice is concerned, there would be no resolution, as just 2 days after his arrest, Ricky would take his own life in his jail cell.
I heard that after they cremated Ricky's body, his parents didn't even pick up the ashes. Nobody did. Morgue attendants just threw them in the fucking trash.
This left Jimmy Troiano as the only remaining defendant in the case. With Ricky dead, the prosecution's case against Jimmy hinged almost entirely on the testimony of Albert Quinones. And while Albert initially told police that Jimmy was involved in Gary's murder, he would later recant his testimony in court during the trial. And with his accounting of the events already in question due to the amount of hallucinogens he had taken that night, the case against Jimmy completely fell apart. And on April 25th, 1985, Jimmy Troiano was found not guilty and acquitted of all charges. But the Acid King legend wouldn't die, as the story would be retold countless times across all forms of media.
We were in the midst of making The Manson Family. At the time, it was called Charlie's Family. We had hit a dry spell with our investors, and I was like, I have to do something to make a new film to show that we had grown as filmmakers.
By this point in the early 90s, America's fascination with true crime had exploded. TV shows like Dateline and Unsolved Mysteries were in full swing, and it seemed like every other week there was a new interview with a notorious serial killer.
I was working at this bookstore. They specialized in true crime paperbacks. And so David St. Clair's book came out, Say You Love Satan. And I read that fucking thing and I was like, bingo. I mean, I updated it consciously. And I was actually infatuated with the kids of the early 90s that were coming at me because I was making a Manson film. I was like, wow, this is sort of similar territory.
And the parallels get even creepier, as both Manson and Kasso, in some sense, have become cultural icons and heroes to lost souls in the aftermath of their crimes. And the Manson family goes into explicit detail about this subject, specifically addressing the way the media mesmerizes the public with tales of blood-soaked occult crimes, which has led to the contagion effect, a fancy word for copycat crimes, a concept overtly and brutally depicted in the Manson family. And though My Sweet Satan doesn't directly broach the subject, the foundation is there, with Ricky positioning himself as a king and a sort of Casanova that mesmerizes his peers with tales of outsmarting his foes.
Played games with me all fucking night long. Yeah, but I wouldn't let him win. I won. Because I'm a winner. That's what I am, man. I'm a winner.
And beating up his enemies, because for some, whether they knew him in person or through the media, Ricky was worth idolizing. 6 months after the murder, 13-year-old girls were seen wearing t-shirts with Ricky's face on them. Barely in the ground, the culture didn't mourn Gary Lauwers, instead opting to mythologize Ricky Kasso. And just like with Manson, once again, the monster becomes the icon, and the victims are forgotten. My Sweet Satan isn't just an obscure short film. It's one of the nastiest pieces of media that you'll ever see, because it combines exploitation, urban legend, and true crime horror into a 20-minute gut punch that's somehow both moralistic and evil, and holds nothing back in terms of sickening, gratuitous violence. So go check it out if you think your stomach can handle it. It can't be posted to YouTube, but it's available in full on the Internet Archive. I'll leave a link in the description.
Happy Halloween, you freaks. I ain't your daddy,